Welcome back to the Better by Nature podcast, where we're talking with folks who have inspiring stories of overcoming adversity by relying on natural remedies. Today I'm joined by two familiar faces to the podcast, Michele Boccardi and Jason Mosel. Michele and Jason both have incredible stories of adversity that they have faced and overcome, which we've gotten into on previous episodes of this podcast. Today they're back with me to talk about running endurance races and the world's toughest mudder. Jason has done 3 World's Toughest Mudders, each with its own set of unique challenges, while Michele, his mother, has been with him every step of the way, training and in his pit crew. As I embark on this journey preparing for this year's World's Toughest Mudder, they've got some words of wisdom for me. So before we jump in, this episode is brought to you by Life Leaf Remedies. At Life Leaf Remedies, we're making natural remedies that help you feel better today. Replace those unnatural household remedies that we've leaned on for too long with superior natural remedies. Check us out at lifeleafremedies.com today. Now, I hope you'll enjoy this episode of the Better by Nature podcast and feel better today, y'all. All right, welcome back to the Better by Nature podcast. I am joined here by a couple of familiar faces that we have had on this podcast before. Michele and Jason, welcome y'all. I'm super excited to have y'all back here. Both of you have pretty incredible stories and have been up to some pretty incredible things since we talked last time. So I'm really excited to get into those things. But something specific has brought us together here to talk again today, and that is a race that is coming up here in November called the World's Toughest Mudder. And you two have particular experience with this race that I do not. And other races since then that I think could probably relate. So would love to get into some of those topics and specifically how you prepared for those situations, maybe what we could have done differently in that preparation, but ultimately how natural remedies have helped you both do some pretty incredible things, whether it be racing or living and doing that as hard as possible and all of those things. So, first I want to start with Michele. When we left off with you, gosh, you were still in the middle of fighting cancer. So how is that going?
This month I'm actually, it'll be 1 year since my surgery.
Whew.
I actually had my 1 year checkup yesterday.
All right.
And it came back perfect.
Excellent.
Everything is clear. Everything is good. I actually had a conversation with her, and there's all these tests now for checking for additional cancer genes. I actually have somebody else close to me today who's having some surgery, and understanding all about that. And the philosophy was, because of the lifestyle I live and and I've chosen to live, which all 3 of us have chose to live. She didn't feel it was necessary. I could definitely have that type of blood work done. But then the mindset, for my mindset, I kept saying to myself, then I'm always trying to think, oh, what possible cancer could I be having? And I just didn't want to live my life like that. So we chose not to. And she wished me luck on my race and told me she'll see me in January.
All right. Now that's awesome. And you mentioned, because of the lifestyle you've chosen to live and all 3 of us have chosen to live. Dive into that a little bit for me and unpack that, because I understand what you mean, but I want to make sure that anybody listening to this for the first time can understand what you mean.
So I know you brought up the world's toughest tough mudder. So
Right.
Jason, I know he will touch base with this in a little bit. But with Jason, I started to do just regular tough mudders, like still regular tough mudders. And I would say I was not a novice, but I didn't put my heart and soul into the tough mudders. I did them, but my mindset wasn't there. And a few years ago, Jason really started being a race director and started doing different races for his causes. And he did one called Devil's Den. And I realized if I was ever going to try to see what my body could do, this was the race to do it. because I felt comfortable. He was the race director,
Right.
meaning I knew I was in a safe environment. Not that I
Right.
didn't trust any other race director, it's that comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to push myself, but I wanted to make sure I was comfortable in pushing myself, you
Right.
know? So I started doing that. And I quickly realized that in order to do that, I had to change some things to build my body. And one of that was removing alcohol from my body. And then as you go out and do these extreme things or do these trainings, you have to be fueling your body in order to retrieve to get maximum out of it. So then I had to learn how to fuel my body. Well, then my body's now sore. So how do I fix my body from the soreness? So it kind of like started on this foundation and just started to build off of it. And now it's like become such a second nature to me, you know? And I still have chosen it's going to be last January, I decided to give up all alcohol. And so I'm in my 19th month of no alcohol, but I'm having a ball because I'm trying to find different types of mocktails,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I try different types of non alcoholic beers, and the mindset has been that I've realized through this transition just with alcohol that I was an emotional drinker.
Interesting.
So if I was stressed, I needed a drink.
Yeah.
If I was uncomfortable in a social situation, I needed a drink. If I was this or this. And when it came down to, do I really want to just have a drink? I haven't found that area yet.
Right.
And we joke because I've left a bottle of wine at Jason's house. So when I complete this year's Devil's Den, we're going to break it open.
Woo.
We'll see if I do.
There we go.
Who knows? So yeah. And because of the lifestyle I started to lead and led was one of the reasons why I was able to have my cancer diagnosed so early because I knew my body so well and I knew when there wasn't a something was wrong with it. I had a really good doctor that I was able to have a conversation with. And from there, we just had tests and the cancer was found.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really important thing, and a lot of people, I don't know that they could say that, And when you're running and you're pushing yourself physically the way that you are, you do get to know your body a little bit better, and you do notice, all right, this is a little off, and there's no reason
Yeah.
that I can pinpoint that should be off. No, that's very, very smart and right on as far as the lifestyle you talk about that we've chosen to live and embracing things like running, and the proof is there, right? You just had your 1 year checkup after, like I said, basically kicking cancer's butt on a Friday and started training on a Monday. Um, so when you're able to do that, is it? And I don't know if the doctors gave you this information, but is it the running? Is it the diet? What do you think it is that is is so helpful in overcoming that situation?
It's the one thing that you haven't mentioned. It's your mind. It's the
Oh,
mindset that you have.
right.
It's Jason and I, when we had this conversation about my cancer, Jason and I had conversation about how can my nutrition even be better and change some, and how can we, the movement was a huge thing. So when talking to the doctors, it was the when I talk about the lifestyle, I it's just being understanding your body and not being afraid. Sometimes I've talked to women afterwards about this certain exam, and there's one woman that says, "No, it runs in my family. I don't want to know. I'm not having that test done." And I'm like,
Okay.
"I'm out." Like
Yeah.
you can, but it's a true fear of
Yeah.
it. And so it's the mindset of I have my moments, you know, your dad, Jason, they lived through them. My crying, my scared and that's a natural progression through it,
Hmm.
but also the mindset that it wasn't going to control me.
Yeah, that's
So
huge.
there
It's not
is
going to
that,
control you.
right. You have to have the mindset of changing it. And mindset is a daily habit, as it is getting up to run, as it is to everything. And it will, we can talk about this further. It will be something you will need in the world.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
also something your crew will need for you. I can talk from the crew perspective. Jason will talk from
Yeah.
being there.
Well, and so Jason, you've been going through some things, and obviously, directing races, and then living side by side with your mom, going through what she's gone through, and then prepping for one of those races. I mean, man, what an experience. So, for you, what has that been like? And then, I guess we could try to segue into, what was it like for you to prep for the world's toughest mutters that you did? But just going through this with your mom and this battle, what has that been like with you?
Interesting in the sense of um, it, I'm not your typical person. Like I think both of you already know. People who've listened to the first podcast know. Um, I'm just not that typical type person. So like when my mom had called and was like, I have cancer. Okay, what are you going to do about it? There wasn't a this pity party.
Yeah,
There wasn't a cry on my shoulder type deal. It was more like, all right, you have cancer.
yeah,
What are you going to do? Like, and that's kind of the baseline of what it started with, because a lot of times, you know, as she had brought up, mindset is a huge thing.
yeah.
And people hear they have cancer. People hear they have all different types of diseases, whatever, like just insert disease here. And once you put in your head that, that's it, then it's very interesting, because you'll start to see somebody's body start to degrade. And it's not necessarily due to the disease itself. It could be because of the mindset.
Mm,
And look, I'm not a doctor, so like a lot of that, I
sure.
get it. But it's kind of the same thing. Like when you give up, you're just giving in.
Hmm.
And when you give in, it just takes control. So, throughout the kind of the process of her having cancer, it was always there was never really a conversation about, you know, death. There was never really a conversation about like, the what if, that like what if worst case scenario. It was just like, all right, you have cancer. So now you're going to fight it, and you'll be at devil's den, whatever. Like it wasn't really like this thing.
Love it.
So yeah, that's basically what it was. And like she had brought up, yeah, we did talk nutrition. We talked about all of these different aspects, because like the first thing, like whether it's cancer, whether it's mental illness, whether it's anything, the first thing that you'll hear is this medication, that medication, this medication, this therapy, whatever.
Right.
And it's not to say that I'm not like this crazy anti-vax fucking person. It's more just about like, let me weigh the options first. Like let's look at the whole table. Like let's talk about cold plunges. Let's talk about CBD. Let's talk about marijuana. Let's talk about healthy eating. Let's talk about the vitamin intake. Like all of these different things, and then you progress to like a medication if needed. Because like at the end of the day, like if you take a disease like polio, like you're not gonna ice plunge yourself out of polio.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like an anti-vax type conversation. It's more just about like and it's not even about like this Tony Robbins like motivational speech type thing. It's just kind of like not going directly into the negative and just overarchingly looking at everything.
Yeah. I want to just touch base. My conversations with Jason are always the ones that I need to keep me going forward. If I want a shoulder to cry on and have someone to feel pity about me, he is the last person I go to, because he's going to say, "Are you done? Like let's just stop this shit, Ma. Like we're not going there." But that's cool
Love it.
because we both have that conversation with each other. Like we're brutally honest with each other. And so, and after my cancer, well, it was uterine cancer. So all my woman products, woman parts were removed, but it threw me into even more of a hot flash.
Yeah.
And to Jason's point, the first thing the lady, my doctor said when I was telling her about this, is says, wow, there's this really good antidepressant whose side effects
Of course.
stops hot flashes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
listen to what you just said to me.
Yeah.
An antidepressant, you're going to put me on an antidepressant, which I'm not depressed.
Yeah.
So I don't have hot flashes. And I said, thank you, but no, thank you. I'll do some other things. And that's, to Jason's point, nothing against Western medicine. It is needed. You break an arm, you need a doctor. You have certain mental illnesses, you need, if for some reason, but we constantly have conversation about my mother. My mother was a cancer warrior. She had cancer for 19 years. However,
Man.
Jason's going to laugh. She also had every pill imaginable. If you had a sniffle, she had an antihistamine for you.
Yeah,
If you
of course.
coughed, she had a cold medicine for you. If you had a headache, she had a certain med for you. And him and I have gone such an extreme opposite of that.
Yeah.
Like the other day I was looking for an aspirin and I couldn't even find one. I couldn't find one anyway.
How common is that?
Yeah. So that was what I want to bring up to Jason's point.
Well, and that is an excellent point, and it is. I want to kind of reemphasize it's not that there's something against Western medicine. There's certainly a place for it, and you mentioned injuries or illnesses. There's certain things. It's like yes, Western medicine is the answer. But when the first answer that Western medicine brings you when you have an issue is here's this antidepressant that also can do this thing, it's like, wait. Time out here. Hang on a second. And I've had a similar experience. So when I was living in Chicago and I got into a car accident, I was having, some anxiety. I was having headaches, just sort of normal things after a car accident. And I expressed that to the doctor that I was seeing. I was worried about, hey, is this going to impact my job? What's going on, man? And he's like, here, try this. It's antidepressant that might help you with headaches. And I wasn't as skeptical then as I am now. But that was part of what made me so skeptical. It's like, all right, sure, I'll try this. So I tried it for 2 days, and I was just furious I'm just absolutely livid about how that stuff made me feel. I can't even describe it to this day, but it was not normal. It was not okay. I'll never forget I called that doctor and I was just let him have it. It's like, I don't know what you gave me. I'm flushing it down the toilet. I will never be back to see you again. Because it's like, for God's sakes, man, I was having headaches, like give me some ibuprofen or something. You don't need to give me an antidepressant that's going to help me with that. So that's where I think there's an issue around some of these things. And that can be a similar issue coming from just about any industry, right? There's just an incentive probably for that doctor to push that thing. And, so he's going to try it where he thinks it makes sense. But it is, I think, our responsibility at that point to say, all right, wait a second, what is this? What is this going to do for me? What is it going to not do for me? And what are my other options? Jason, you brought it up. What about this? What about that? Medical marijuana, CBD, all those types of things. Obviously, I'm a big advocate for those things, but there's reasons that those plants were put on this earth, right? And so if there is a way that those things can help us, why not reach for those before some lab-produced thing that's got a weird list of side effects that you're like looking over your shoulder about? When, the worst thing about a plant medicine is that it might not work, right? I mean, I don't think that there's, and we don't need to get into all the different plant medicines and that deep topic, but, for the most part, those things don't carry a hefty list of side effects. So that's where I think it's neat that was your first perspective to go to, instead of saying, all right, well, what's the medication? What's the treatment?
Yeah.
and that's powerful because it worked. Like here you are, look at you, you're kicking butt and taking names, getting ready to take on the Devil's Den, and in no way is that a reference to death, right? Like that's a
No,
race,
that's a
and
race.
that is a
And
big race.
there's, to me, it's a very big race. To everybody, it's
Yeah,
a big race.
absolutely.
It's huge.
So explain that a little bit. And I know, Jason, last time you were on, we talked about the Devil's Den a little bit. But again, just for somebody who's listening for the first time, Michele, what is it that you're getting prepared for with that race?
Oh, maybe I'll have Jason explain the race route, and then I'll give my 2 cents because I just did it in May to practice.
Okay. So
So for Devil's Den, Devil's Den is a 6 mile loop on a small mountain in Bradford, Vermont, called Brights Mountain. The 6 mile loop has somewhere in the ballpark of 1,700 feet of climbing in the loop, and then runners will have an option of signing up for 30 hours, 12 hours, or 1 6 mile loop. And the 30 hours and 12-hour runners will do as many loops as they can within the given time frame. We set up an area where they can set up like a section for their pit area, their tent, and 12-hour runners get a little area that they can leave a drop in at. And they just go out and hammer it down until they're done. And, prepping for something like that is tricky in the sense of, some people, do it last minute and just, do it on a whim. Other people sign up a year, or they put it in their mind to do it 2 years in advance, and then they start their planning. And what's always tricky in New England, especially, well, everywhere, but especially in New England, is weather plays a huge, huge deal with this. And so, the first year we held it, when we started the race, it was 90 degrees. Then we had a wicked thunderstorm that rolled through at around midnight and then dropped down to, 35 degrees. And
whoa.
then the following year, it was like beautiful the whole
Mm-hmm.
time. Got a little chilly at night, but nothing crazy. And then last year, it got down to high 20s at night. And
Oh.
so, like, you really don't know what you're going to get into
Oof.
on the weather aspect of it.
Yeah.
So it makes it tricky to, prep for gear and, all of all that stuff. You kind of have to prep for your worst case scenario.
Right.
And then, depending on what your goals are, now you got to kind of think about your pace. And it's very, very easy to go out hot.
Mm-hmm.
You're fresh, all your kind of nerves are firing off, your anxiety's high. And so you go out like wicked hard. And then you complete that first lap and, an amazing time. You're feeling good. And then reality typically sets in somewhere like when the sun is starting to set and you're going into the night, and you're like, oh Christ, yeah, this is gonna not be good.
Yeah.
And you really yeah, that's where things start to become real. And then you go through the night, and usually at night is when the most people will quit. um, and it's because you get into your head and everything like that. And so usually what I tell runners are, just run till the morning, run until you see the sun, because the sun is a incredible, incredible, um, I can't think of the right
A
word, but
motivator.
well, it's not even a motivator, but it's like, how like when you're groggy in the morning and you have your cup of coffee and you get that caffeine hit. That's the sun.
Yeah.
That it's like, that's your best caffeine hit. When that sun comes up, you become a new person, and all of a sudden you can run, so much quicker.
Yeah.
Um, and typically, people who at least go until the sun comes up, their race flips straight around, and then they complete it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of like the high level on this.
So he talks so like, oh, it's just about this
It's just this. It's
1700,
just that.
yeah, this and that. And when he does his announcements before we go out, he'll say, now there's some, it's a little bit of a challenge and this and that. And I've seen runners come in and use words with him that are like a little challenging. What the hell? Like, and so I have signed up for the 30-hour.
Ooh.
Right. And he has brought up an excellent point, which will be an excellent point for you, is the whole concept, even with my trainer, is that I don't go out hot,
Yeah.
that I don't burn myself out. Because the first 1.75 to 2 miles is your steepest hike
Okay.
right off the gate. That's the highest, hottest going. And then I have two more peaks that I have to climb up. But that is the highest. And so I could burn out going up, or I can like learn to pace it accordingly. And that is
Right.
huge. Like, part of my intimidation was always with, even if you were to run with me, Miles, or Jason runs, I don't have your speed.
Sure.
I just, and that's not important to me. Like, I used to think it was, but it's not. And through Jason, Amber, my coach, that speed has nothing to do with it. It is the longevity and the endurance. Yes, you have to keep a pace, but it's not like, I've seen what Jason can complete. I have seen some of his friends, fellow runners and endurance people. I've seen what they have completed in short. I've seen this kid, what some of these guys have completed at his race. They have completed over 100 miles.
Yeah.
You can use that as an intimidation or kind of as a motivation not to do. I don't want to do 100 miles. I have my goal.
Right.
That is fine for me. And
Yeah.
that's what I want. But it's for me to learn pace and endurance.
Absolutely. Now, and I think about that a lot. So since I've been really taking the world's toughest training seriously, I've been following some other runners, and there's some out there. There's one guy who did 350 miles in a week. He did a 100 miler and then a 250, like just back to back. And yeah, at that point, it's like, to hell with pace. I don't care. I mean, this guy's just doing it, and that is inspiring, and just it's just wild, and the same person, I'll watch he'll post a training run where he did 10 miles, and he still ran at like a 13 to 15 minute pace, which that's not overly impressive for anybody. But the point being is that he's going to apply that same pace to hundreds of miles. So I totally relate with what you're saying there. So Michele, again, now that you're getting ready for this, it's coming up, right? It's a few months out. It's in October, right?
In October, yes.
I guess what is still ahead for you as far as training goes? Like, what is still left for you to accomplish or check the box on?
There's really not checking the boxes. It's more building and
Okay.
continue to work with my endurance and to strategize. So I am going back out to Vermont in August.
Okay.
Jason's and my trainer will be at Jason's house in August. And we're going out again to do Devil's Den. And it's more for her to understand where my strength in the course is,
Mm-hmm.
and where I don't, we'll use the word weakness, but where, that weakness is, and how do we compensate for both?
Right.
That
Right.
where my
Right.
strength is, I don't push too hard, that I burn myself out. And my weakness is hiking up hills. And it was something as simple as I was going out too fast. I was taking them too high up too quickly. And so my heart rate was going way too high. So I ended up hyperventilating. So I then, a week later, I was with Jason and Amber, and we went out to Infinitus. They were supporting some of their runner friends. And I did the Musamalu Trail, which is a 9.5 mile trail. And I was able to accomplish 3.5 miles in an hour. Now people are like, well, 3.5 miles. That elevation is 2,200 feet up. but I learned to keep my pace, my heart rate between a certain amount. So even though I was out of breath, I wasn't hyperventilating.
Right.
So that's where I think we're at the point of strategies and pushing and seeing how far my body can go before it starts to break, and you know, feeling and working with the stretching and the flexibility and the mindset. We talked in my last training session, meeting with her, which was Monday. We talked some of my race, some of my forms, but we talked a lot about my mind. Where was my
Right.
mind at?
That's super important. And maybe we can get into it a little bit and talk about the experience y'all both have had with the world's toughest. But you mentioned it, Jason. When the sun goes down, things change a little bit. So I'd like to talk about Devil's Den and what that's like, and maybe a little bit why it's called Devil's Den.
You can
But
answer that one.
yeah, but then also talk about how the similar challenge exists with World's Toughest. And I've watched a few folks that are going out, and they're some of the leaders of the pack in that race, and it does seem like the night is just it's a beast. The darkness and the night and all of that, and even for some of the most seasoned runners out there, it seems to take a toll on them. So, Jason, what is that? Like, what is it about the night that's just so daunting?
The nighttime is where things get quiet, and then you get in your head. Like that's the biggest thing. Like where when you start something, everything is great. Like you feel great, you're injury free, you're coming into a race fully trained, whatever. You have some like maybe a few things back and forth in your head that I train enough and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, when you toe that start line, you're as good as you're going to be.
Yeah.
And by the time the nightfall comes, you've already, put on some miles and everything's now quiet. If you're, when we were in the desert or even, the desert gets wicked quiet. And then when we did it in Atlanta, the woods get wicked quiet too.
Yeah.
And when you do Devil's Den, that's when, at night, everything's asleep. Like you don't hear anything. You may hear a barred owl and that's it.
Yeah.
But so then you start to get into your head and you start to question your abilities. You start to like say to yourself, is this even possible? Can I do this? What you were doing like 3 miles in an hour now becomes 3 miles in 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at your watch and you're a mile away to the pit area or a mile away to the next checkpoint, whatever the case may be, that's great, but it's going to take you like what feels like forever.
Yeah.
And you just get into that moment. And that's one of the biggest problems is that you get into the moment that you're currently in, that darkness, that silence, you're in your head. I can't do this. Is this even possible? So on and so forth. And then you start to second guess maybe your goal. So if your goal was to get a 50-mile bib, well, you know what? I just want to make it.
Yeah.
So now you're downgrading like what you did or what you wanted to do when in retrospect, you're probably doing fine. Like, so for example, like when I was running the 550 miler and there would be times where I'm like, oh, God, I'm so slow. I'm behind schedule and all these things. And you start to get into your own head, you get back and your crew is like, no, you were quicker than you were supposed to be. And it's interesting because like you're quicker, but you feel like you're slower.
Yeah.
And by feeling that way, you start to get into your own head and you say, there's no way I can do this. And it just degrades from there. And that's what the nighttime like will have on you. And then you want to add another layer to that, have it start raining, make it more miserable.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're wet. Like you're going to be wet. Like at World's Toughest Mudder, you're going to go through an obstacle and you will get wet.
Oh yeah.
Like now, but like you take a regular trail race like Devil's Den and like already the night is daunting and now you're having hallucinations from sleep deprivation and it starts raining and you're just like, you know what sounds so much better not doing this. and, and you get into your, like I said, you get into your head and so on and so forth. And one way I try to relieve that for myself, and this is all through trial and error. Like, I'm not saying that like once I, got it heavily into whether it was OCR or, ultras or trail running or anything like that, that I was like, always on top of it. One thing I learned is basically like what I told myself was like, fuck it, you got nothing else on your calendar. What else are you going to do?
There you go.
And so you don't let your mind wander. You don't like think about all these things of like, oh, well, the lawn needs to be cut, or, whatever, like all these like stupid ancillary things. You don't let your mind wander. You stay on task.
Yeah. Well,
And why is it called Devil's Den? Explain that one.
Yeah, that's easy.
I know.
The trailhead we start at is called Devil's Den.
Yeah.
But um, up in the mountains, there's actually a den, and it's called Devil's Den. And the way that the story goes, I believe it was back in the 1800s, in Bradford, Vermont, the town where this mountain is. There was a guy, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he said that he could talk to Jesus. And so he wanted to go on a 30-day fast and live in this den while he talked to God. And the people in the town were basically like, no, the only people that talk to God are priests, so you must be a devil. And so they coined the phrase that was the Devil's Den.
Wow.
And so that is why the race is called that. And then like when you look at the imagery of what I do for the race, so one thing that I like to incorporate in all my events is story.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at the imagery, it's an upside down image of a Devil's Tarot card. And one of the reasons for that is that if you are doing a tarot reading and you get dealt the Devil's Tarot card and it comes upside down, then that's a symbol of you overcoming adversity, overcoming things like addiction, overcoming like the dark times and coming into the light. So base the whole basic race around that image of the upside down Devil's Tarot card.
Hell yeah. Love that, man. Absolutely love that. And that is what, all of this is about, is overcoming adversity, and if I can, applying it to like what I'm doing right now, trying to start a business, the sun goes down, you've had your little honeymoon. All right, the business is launched, and now you got to make money. You got to survive. It's nighttime. It gets dark. You can get in your head. These things, these races that we do, people, I hear it all the time. Are you crazy? Why do you do that? And it's like, yeah, maybe a little bit, but at the end of the day, this lifestyle does prepare you uniquely to take on the rest of life, which seems to only be getting harder. But no, and that's why I've embraced this. I know that's why y'all have embraced this. So let's dive into the world's toughest a little bit. Jason, you were the inspiration for me to want to go that far. I mean, I know we talked about last time a little bit that, I got into Tough Mudders around the same time I think that you were getting into the world's toughest. So what was it that specifically got you into that race? And since then, what has gotten you to go further into the racing lifestyle, to be a race director and to just go all in on this lifestyle?
So, I mean, we talked about it on the first podcast, what got me into like OCRs and running in general. But as it pertains to World's Toughest, it was an interesting, like, so a lot of people do a progression,
Mm-hmm.
like, they'll do, a Tough Mudder and then maybe a Toughest and then, go on to Worlds. If you're in the Spartan world, you do a Sprint, Super Beast, Ultra, so on and so forth. I did not do that. I was mainly like, okay, I'm going to do a Tough Mudder. Okay, I'm going to do Spartan Ultra. And now I'm going to do Worlds. And, back then I was still kind of finding my way in the sense of like, I really enjoyed the intensity of workouts and enjoyed the intensity of like accomplishing something hard.
Right.
And so When it came down to World's Toughest Mudder, it was very like in the beginning, kind of like, ugh, like that's too much. And then it turned into, I can do that. And so just basically went all in on it. And the first time I went out there, I DNF'd hard. Like, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
Like I was basically just like, okay, I've done a Tough Mudder before. Now I'm gonna do it for 24 hours. Did math in my head. I'm like, this is pretty simple. Not really understanding anything about the ultra world, not understanding anything about like the body and natural remedies as it pertains to like hydration and how it pertains to nutrition and all of that. So yeah, I DNF'd hard on the first one. Because I was still under the mindset of like goos and Cliff Bars and all of these different things. And then it was year 2 where I got my 50-mile bid in Vegas. And, there were a few different things that I changed with the approach to doing something like that. That was also the year that my wife Amber ran it with me. And, it was mainly a thing where like after that first year, I did kind of have a chip on my shoulder. Obviously after a DNF like that, you do kind of have a chip on your shoulder. You do, change and kind of do things differently. And then you hit that goal. The third time we did it was in Atlanta, and I DNF'd that one too because of hypothermia.
Yeah.
Which, that was what it was. That was, it's kind of funny looking back on it now because it was like Atlanta had that cold snap, and I kind of in and out remember the end of it where like I came into the pit crew and they bundled me up with all the emergency blankets and everything, and I was just jackhammering hard. And I remember looking at a guy that was in the pit, and I was like, "Hey, did you just get my text?" And he was like, "What the fuck?" Like, I was just like super out there. And but that again goes back to preparation. I took for granted the fact that we're going to be in Atlanta. Like, what do I need a wetsuit for? What do I need like all these warm things for? And I paid the price.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to the conversation that we were having earlier about preparation. Like this year's Worlds is going to be in Texas.
Yep.
Does not mean you don't need a wetsuit.
No.
Does not mean you don't need cold weather gear. I mean, I've done events where it's been July, it's been 70 degrees, and I watch people drop for hypothermia.
Yeah.
That it's all about your core temperature at that point.
Yeah.
But like all the same rules still apply than like what we just talked about too. So like at night, like, okay, so there's, I don't know, 1,000+ runners out there. Guess what? In the middle of the night, you are the only bastard out there, and you are by yourself. So it starts with like thousands of people, huge amount of energy, and then you cross over midnight, and you got people that are sleeping. You have people that drop DNF and everything like that, and you find yourself out there by yourself, and you're like, where the hell is everybody? And you find yourself in those situations of like, now you're in your mind, and now it's just you and yourself. And you got to make all those decisions. You're going to get to Arctic enema again after midnight, and you're going to have to do it. You're going to get to Funky Monkey, and you're going to slip off the bars. You're going to fall into water, and you're going to do your penalty. And it's the one thing where I've heard a lot of people say like, well, with OCRs you have that issue, which makes trail running a little bit easier mentally, but it really doesn't, because when you think about it, especially up where we run, you're doing Funky Monkey at 3 a.m. You slip, you fall in the water. Super, like, just sucks.
Yeah.
And now take the same thing where, I don't know, you're in a 200-mile race, and you're 100 miles in, and it's 3 a.m., and you trip on a root or a rock, and you bust your knee open, you smash your foot. Like, it's the same type of mentality that you have. And so like you will have these same dynamics. Like yes, there are differences. Like you do need your grip strength and you do need like upper body strength to do these obstacles and everything like that and Tough Mudder, but mentally it's
Mhm.
very very similar. Because you're going to run into the same issues that in both things.
Yeah,
It's going to be dark, something's going to happen, it's going to piss you off, and it's going to eat away at you.
absolutely. Dang.
Yeah, all of that is true. And I'm going to interact right here because I've been to all of his races. Most of
Absolutely.
them, most of us Tough Mudders, I've always been in that pit crew. And your pit crew is also as important to your mindset as everything else. And I think it's who is in your pit crew, Miles?
Oh, mine?
Yeah,
So I haven't fully established it, but I've got, several folks top of mind. Like my mom will be there and
yeah,
Beth will be in there. A couple of my
yeah,
friends I know will be in there. Brother-in-law.
yeah. So I
So
think
yeah.
it's kind of like you need to have a form of a strategy before you even go in there.
Yeah.
And Jason can talk to the more on this in reference to the food preparations, and even down to they were taking vitamins. They were
Yeah.
doing their vitamins at certain times of the day to get all those nutrients. But your pit crew, I've learned through trial and error, and I learned specifically at Amber's race, and now understand it like it was like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Is they need to be like the toughest, meanest person with you.
Yeah.
Because when you walk in and say, I'm done, I've had it, I watched Jason do this with Amber. I learned how I had to do this. You just kind of, they have to learn to ignore that conversation you're having and understand you to know when possibly you have had enough, but it's
Yeah.
not from what you're saying, it's from your actions. Like Jason was saying when he came in from hypothermia and he's like talking like we knew he didn't know where he was. That's a totally different situation than walking in and saying, this is fucking bullshit. I'm not doing this. Because if they're like, oh, okay, let's pack up and go home, you are
Yeah.
going to regret that.
Yeah. For sure. No.
So go ahead.
And I want to, okay, so like edit this part out, Miles. So
Okay.
I have like 7 minutes before I have to scoop.
Okay.
So I'm gonna like I want to burn through a few different
For
things.
sure.
Okay,
For sure.
back to it. So like to add on to what she had just said, I was gonna ask you who in your team is the dick,
Yeah.
because you need to have one. Like you need to have that person who's not going to wipe your ass and be like everything's gonna be okay. Like, oh, are you hurt? Like blah
Yeah.
blah blah. Yes, there's like this fine dance that you do with that. Um, but what like you'll realize, and I realized this mainly with the 500 miler out of everything, is that your mind is kind of like this wild thing where it's going to send pain signals down to certain areas of your body, and you're going to be like, oh my god, I don't want to injure myself and like be out for whatever. And it's like, well, are you injured or are you just in pain?
Yeah.
Like there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And so you will need that person that's not going to like look at you in your worst, like, and I mean your worst, where their heart is going to wrench because like they don't want to see you in pain or anything like that. But like if you were to ask Amber, like like it's funny because like there's a phrase that I say, and it's not PC, but that's me. So like Amber is like perfect in my pit crew, and I tell everybody like Amber's perfect because she can look into my eyes and know whether to call me a pussy or an ambulance, and that that is what you need.
Yeah.
Like you need that person there because she understands that she would rather see me go through this short period of discomfort instead of the longer regret
Right.
of DNFing when you could have
Yeah.
done it.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things, and so then is like we can transition that into kind of the nutritional aspect of this. So like when you're looking at kind of your calorie intake per hour and everything like that, you're going to kind of have your typical things. Like for me, what's now worked for me is utilizing real food. There is a book. It's an amazing book called Food Zone Portables, and has a bunch of great things in there of how you make your own running or biking food. One thing that I love that works for me, French toast bars, and then suck that down with some maple syrup.
Ooh,
it's amazing. And
right.
like has simple carbs in it, sugar, a lot of good stuff. And there's other different types of recipes in there. But what you will notice is that your palate will change throughout this adventure. So, like, what is your plan B when it hits midnight and your crew stuffs all these French toast bars in there, and you're like, I don't want to eat another fucking French toast bar. Like, and then it's like, oh shit, that's the only thing we planned.
Yeah.
So there is that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is going to be the what's your treat? Like what gets you up? Like for me, it's Pop-Tarts. It's s'more Pop-Tarts.
Okay.
And it's like when I'm feeling down, I eat a s'mores Pop-Tart. That's kind of my treat. Sometimes I remember when I ran it, and this is going to sound like really weird, but ultra food is weird. So when I was running a 200 miler out in El Paso, it was pickle and cheese quesadillas. Like that set me like, whoa, that was amazing. And then another thing out there they had was I think like Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, hadn't put an A on it with maple syrup. It was, I don't know, it was just like it.
Wow.
So like basically what I'm getting at is like, what is your kind of go-to?
Yeah.
To that. And you got to kind of really think about that, because you don't want to say like, oh, I really love chocolate cake, because like they're going to be like, here's your chocolate cake, and it has so much sugar that you completely shit yourself.
Yeah.
Or like it's one of those deals where like there's a lot of different things too, where it's like, oh, I really love beef jerky, but you'll notice that all of a sudden you can't chew.
Yeah.
Like you need something that's like easily just like kind of throw it in, get it down. So like when Amber was running her 250 miler, we were just feeding her a full avocado. When I was running my 500 miler, I was just eating a stick of butter. Like,
whoa,
it's high calories. You don't chew it.
it just
Gets down quick.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And I'm not saying to fuel yourself with straight butter, like first world stuff is butter.
I hear you.
But these are things that you do like have to think about, in the sense of like the calorie intake that you need for something like this is super high. So when your mouth now can't chew anymore, what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've thought a lot about that, and bananas are a big one, and I actually hate bananas, but I notice physically how I feel when I eat bananas. It improves. But
then
yeah,
what can you put it in? Like, what can you take that banana and put it in? Like, is they smash it and put it in with something else that will help that? You still get that.
I'll have to figure that out, because I hate bananas.
You can either figure that out, or the sense is like, what's in a banana?
Yeah.
Like, and then you work from there.
Yeah, right.
Like, if you don't like bananas, guess what? You're really not going to like bananas.
Yeah, right.
Like, so it's not trying to think about like forcing yourself into taking in that food, but like when you look at a banana, you're thinking about the potassium, you're thinking about the carbs, you're thinking about the sugar. Fine. What other foods have those things? Or if there are vitamin supplements that you can take with something like that, what are those? And so how can you incorporate that into there, where you're not trying to like reinvent the wheel and be like, how can I make a banana palatable? Guess what? You're not. Like, you're not.
Yeah, I believe that.
If you smash it up and you're spooning it into your mouth, guess what? It tastes like a banana.
Yeah.
And if it's the taste you cannot stand, you don't want it.
Yeah. No, that's good thought, because that is one that I know I'll have to rely on bananas. They help physically too much, but like bananas and then pickles and just stuff like that. So I have thought about the food side of it, and kind of like, how many calories am I going to burn versus how do I try to keep up with that? And so, but Jason, I know you've got to run. So thank you so much for jumping in and joining us again on the podcast. And giving your perspective on this race, man. I'm excited to see how your recovery adventure goes now that you got a little bit of a recovery adventure in front of you, but how the Devil's Den goes here in October with Michele running. So thank you so much,
We'll have
man.
to do a follow-up.
Yeah, we will.
We'll do a follow-up.
We will. After everybody gets done with their races, maybe like December or January, we've licked the wounds a little bit.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
all right. Well, thank you, sir.
Right.
We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Bye, JJ.
All right. And Michele, I don't want to end too abruptly here because I think that there's definitely still something we can touch on from the pit crew perspective, which is where we just were there. And Jason brings up a point, like who's we'll call it the enforcer. Who's the enforcer? Who's gonna see through the tired BS and be able to keep me going? But what was your experience with each of these mutters? Jason mentioned he had a DNF on the first one, and then then there was Vegas in the desert, and then there's Atlanta with that situation and the weather. From a pit crew perspective, what do you feel like? I guess, how do you prepare better for those situations?
I think what I wasn't prepared for was what I should have been more prepared for. I know this is going to sound odd, but taking the mother out of me.
Yeah.
Because when you see your child, I don't care what age they are, in a form of discomfort or hurt, your protection mode goes in.
Right.
And so I probably wasn't the most supportive in him pushing along. And then as each one came along, I kind of understood more so when I had to have the conversation of, is enough enough? Like, I think you've gone far enough. And when he hit the hypodermia and he was not coherent of where he was, then there's a mental health issue and aspect of possibly hurting himself. So that's a whole nother thing.
Right.
So when he says you need that person who's going to be a dick, I know it's not going to be Beth or your mother.
Yeah. It might be my mom. She takes a strange joy out of my pain sometimes.
I think it will be to a certain point, but I think it's, even if it's anybody of the people who you're training with, because they might understand and see what your training is with. He brings up some excellent points as we talk about the mindset aspect also. And we have to have that same mindset within the pit crew. So from the pit crew aspect, it's more like, how do I want to say this? They can't ask you questions.
Mm-hmm.
You are not, as you go through this, your mindset is not going to be at the point to be able to answer. So when you come in, they can't say to you, so I have 6 different things for you to eat. What would you like?
Yeah.
No, they have to understand it's the middle of the night. It is cold. This is what I'm giving them hot. This is what I'm giving them cold. And they walk in and say, do you want something hot or cold? Like something as simple as that. And they say hot. He says hot. Then that's what they get.
Yep.
There's no point of, there is no conversations. There is no, so how are you feeling now?
Yeah.
What's going on? They could say, what do you need to have rolled out? What do I need to massage? What's the change? And when you leave, your pit crew should be completely prepared for you to come back. Not when they think you're going to come back and prepare a half hour beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be, the minute you have left, everything should be out prepared for you to come back.
Yeah.
It's all done. This way here, you can come back in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and nobody's scrambling. It's all laid out for it. So if it's cold food and it's, in Dallas, you might not put it out, but you have it exactly written out.
Mm-hmm.
I would also have a chart, a pad, something where the people can see what you have when you left, when you came in, and even put down what you ate. So there's that, because as tired as you are, your pit crew is going to be just as tired.
Yeah, for sure.
They're going to be just as tired.
Yeah. Well, so that's the part that, we got to get everybody kind of on board with. Because I think right now, when I talk to my friends and family about this, they're like, oh, cool, that's fun. Good for you. It's like, no, I'm going to need you. I'm going to need you to be there for 24 hours. All right.
That's one of the
So,
hardest things is finding a pit crew. To be very honest, a
yeah.
pit crew for a runner for any type of an ultra, whether it's there or something else. I mean, um, Amber's doing her race. She knows automatically she has me and Jason. Like that's an automatic.
Yeah.
But she needs so many more people. You know, for you, I would say if you had 3 to 4, because then you were able to rotate. If somebody
Hmm.
needed to go to their car to catch a nap, then that is okay, or whatever it is. I don't know the makeup of it, of
Yeah.
that type of thing. So it is that type of, yeah, whole thought process. And they should even have, like, Jason and I are even talking for Amber's race, what can we surprise her with? Like,
There you go.
when she's in that 6th day of
Yeah.
running, what food can we surprise her with that she doesn't know
Yeah.
that's going to make her day? Like,
Yeah.
you know, on that
Interesting.
aspect.
Well, and so I think I was pretty well aligned with about 3 to 4. I think I've got 3 to 4 that will be there for that. I've also got Dalton, who is kind of my running buddy, right?
Yep.
We've done these mutters together. He's doing this with me. The idea is that we'll do every lap together. We'll go out and run together. I see you shaking your head, and I I don't have a problem believing that won't happen. I don't have a problem believing that we might need different things and run at different times and whatever that may be. But his pit crew will also be part of my pit crew, so we'll have a little bit of overlap there.
Right, because you
Um,
can set up your tents side by side to
right,
each other. When you go in to set up, you can set them up side by side and, the whole thing. So that is really important. And even when you get there and you're set up, you lay everything out so people aren't trying to find everything,
right.
like it's this whole, like, Dalton, and both pit crews should be having like Zoom meetings. Like,
Yeah,
this is what's important. This is what we need. This is, and tell them I don't want to be babied
yeah,
unless
right.
I'm bleeding, a bone sticking out, or I'm mentally incapacitated.
Yeah,
And your pit crew has to learn to get a tough skin,
yes.
because, no offense, I know you, and I know you're not like this, but you're going to tell them to fuck off.
I probably will.
Amber has yelled at me multiple times.
Yeah.
I've seen I have seen people get into Jason's face, screaming at him, telling him he's a piece of shit and we're not going out again. And he'll be like, okay, so which sneaker do you want? Do you want that sneaker or that sneaker? Right?
Here we go. We're gonna keep going.
Yeah, it's that type. So the tough skin is what you need, because what you say in those 24 hours isn't meant.
Yeah. Well, and so I think I've already got the person in mind for my designated dickhead. My brother-in-law is a Marine, so I
Oh,
th- I
yes,
think
and I've
he
met him. Yeah,
I think he's cut out for
he
the
will.
job. And we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
We played high school football together, so there's a little bit of that willingness to get in each other's face and know that that's sort of just the way it is when you're
Yeah.
competing.
I think he would also understand when he might need to make that call to pull you.
Yeah, somebody like that will be able to see the difference in
Yes.
me.
It
So
just like
yeah,
Amber and Jason have a unique thing. They can tell each other when they've gone too far. And so yeah.
yeah. No, I see that being probably how it plays out. And Dalton and I have a couple of common friends that I think that will be in there with us, helping us with nutrition stuff, with stretching out and that kind of thing. One of our friends is a physical therapist, so hoping to have him in there with us. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm very excited to find out, what's going on. Because, and I think that there's only so much you can prepare for, and then from there you have to just be prepared for the unprepared. And that's sort of what I've tried to embrace in my training. Right. And like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes there might be some detriment to that. Like I pushed myself a little bit harder earlier this week where I did 3 5-mile runs in 2 days. And I also had a lift on top of that. And so by Monday my body was not okay.
No, but that's okay. You have to take your body to a limit and pull it back, and then you have
Yeah.
to take it when you're training for something like this. And you also have to, in fact, I just did something on this. Um, I want people to understand we do not go into any of these races, and I'm 99% sure you're the same way, without fear. Fear is like
Sure.
right here on our shoulders. And when I attempted my first Devil's Den, Jason saw my whole composure just change, and I was as white as a ghost. And I'm
Yeah.
like I could have gone and got into a fetal position. And all he said to me was, "You just put one foot in front of the other. That is all you do, Ma. Like that is it." And fear is a normal component and emotion of our lives, and it's how we allow fear to enter into our lives.
Hmm.
I have learned from training from a race to starting a business to starting a relationship to
Fighting
um,
cancer.
fighting cancer to anything and everything you do, fear is going to be there.
Yeah.
There are some mornings when I wake up and I might not even know what my training is. I'll look at it and I immediately have to run to the bathroom because the fear just overcomes me because it's so uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And people might be saying, why? Whatever you want to do in life, if you want to move forward in anything you do in life, I don't care what it is, there is going to be a stage of uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
And because your brain is like, oh, she is uncomfortable, this is not right, they're going
Hmm.
to put fear in. So, like I said in the beginning, your mind tells your brain tells your body is how you show up.
Right. Right. No, and it's totally true. I think that it's important for us to acknowledge that. And I try to do that a little bit on my social media posts that I do, and
Hmm.
showing like a lot of times I don't want to go for a run. I don't want to. I just it's not like, oh, you don't want to, but you do. And it's like, no. There is, after a full day, and I got 2 kids and a job and all this stuff. The last thing I want to do at 12 or 1 in the morning is go and run. I want to go curl up in my comfy bed and I want to
Yes.
sleep. you
Yes.
know? But I
Yes.
don't. I go out and I get myself into the discomfort because I think that that's really where the training lies. It's not in being able to run a certain distance at a certain pace or having a certain strength. It really is being able to understand how to use your mind when that discomfort sets in, and understanding that getting yourself to that place of discomfort was the point.
Yes.
Right? It's not that, oh shoot, I got here and now my training's all blown up. No, no,
Right.
no. And I did this to myself a couple of weeks ago, and this again, it kind of like what you're saying. I did this, and then I had to take some steps back. So a couple of weeks ago, I went out and I set out. I was going to try to run 15 miles, but I didn't make it. I ran 11, and about 8.5 miles in, I got a gnarly blister on my left foot, and I felt it almost immediately. It felt like there was a sharp rock right on the ball of my foot.
Hmm.
And I even stopped. I'm like, gosh, did I get a rock on my shoe? I stopped. I took my shoe off, tried to, I was like, nope, that's a blister. And so I kept going. Like I said, I got to 11 and I stopped. And from there, I basically couldn't walk for the next 3 days.
Right.
The blister on my foot was so bad. It was really tough to walk for the next few days. So I couldn't run for a week. I took myself out of that. But that's what it is. It's getting to that point at 8.5 miles in and realizing you got a blister, and it's like, all right, well, I'm going to keep going, and this is going to suck. But here we go.
And people think we're crazy because we run. Well, take what we're doing out of it.
Yeah.
If you want to get a degree, you have to put in all these hours to get that degree.
Yeah.
If you want a new job, or if you want to be promoted in your job, you have to go out and just, things don't come, it doesn't fall in your lap. Like,
No.
you have to work for it. What we're working for is no different than someone else working for a promotion, someone else working to have a new house, someone else working on their relationship, someone else working, whatever you're working for within the passion or a goal. Like, people say to me, like, that's crazy what you do. And I'm like, but that's my passion.
Yeah.
This is where my passion is. When you find your passion, you do the exact same thing, but differently.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
know?
you learn, well, and I think it's a subconscious thing that most of us overlook, is like when you're passionate about something, you're willing to overcome those moments of adversity,
Right.
because that's what I want to do. I'm here to do it. Like if I enjoy water skiing, it's like, oh, I fell. Well, so what? I'm going to get back up, right? Like I'm not
Right.
going to think about that I fell. I want to keep water skiing, so I'm just going to get back up. If I'm out there and I'm thinking about water skiing like a punishment, like most people think about running, and I fall, I'm going to use that as my reason. Like, all right, I'm done. I fell. I'm out. Like you're almost looking for that thing to let you quit. And what where we're trying to get to is the opposite. I'm looking for that thing that makes me want to quit, so I can look it in the face and say no.
Right.
And it, the first conversation I had with Jason, he talked about that monster a little bit, and I think he wore the shirt that said monster on it. And I think about that a lot, and he talked about when the sun goes down, and those are the times where you're alone, you're quiet, you're thinking about this and that, and what, again, the reasons for why you might want to quit or allow
Right.
yourself to quit. And those are the moments where I look at that desire to quit as the monster. Like,
Yep.
oh, you want to quit? No, I'm going to take you deeper. Now we're going to go deeper in this water. You don't want to swim here? We're going to swim
Yep.
longer. We're going to keep going here. You don't want this? That's
Yeah.
my sign to take you further down this path. And you really have to lean into that. You can't passively do that.
No.
But the thing is life is going to throw those things at you anyway. So if you don't have that kind of mindset ready to use, you won't be able to.
Right.
You'll be brought to your knees, and you'll go, "What do I do?" Instead of going, "Oh, really? This is where
Right.
you want me to quit? Well, guess what? Now we're going to go
Right.
further."
Right. Exactly. It's all, and it's understanding the journey as you're going through it. Like, you have your goal for the world. I have my goal.
Yeah.
But this whole process, if I put my total self-worth in my end goal and I don't reach it, am I a failure? No. It's this whole journey that put me through that point of where I got to that.
Absolutely.
The old Michele would never have thought I'd be out. I mean, I was telling you beforehand, in the next 3 days, I have to do 3-hour hikes every day.
Yeah.
Me? Are you freaking serious?
Yeah.
Doing that? Like, why? Like, doing that. And it's not so much, as you just said, it's now when I'm put up against any other adversity, it's like, come on.
Yep.
I've gone out hiking for 3 hours at a trail. I have been up 24 hours multiple times. Like, bring it.
Yep.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
Let's go at it. And Jason was a great reminder of that. We talked in the beginning of this podcast. He was not somebody I called if I wanted sympathy.
Yeah.
That did not happen. There was
Yeah.
no sympathy from him. He constantly reminded me, Ma, you've done this, you've done this, you've gone through this, you've survived this, you have gone through here. Cancer's got no place in your in your life. So the
Right
doctor's
on.
telling you this, we're gonna have the surgery and we're gonna continue moving on. It was like it's just those reminders of the stepping ladder that you're using to get to the top.
Yeah.
And when you get to the top, you put up another ladder.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this in our first podcast.
Yep.
The goal isn't for me to complete Devil's Dam. I know for you, your goal is not to complete the world.
Right.
That's a stepping stone or a stepping rung in your ladder of whatever.
Yeah.
Mine is for my health. I want to be going to Devil's Den when I'm 80 and being a volunteer there and
Heck
being
yeah.
able to help and go out
Yes.
and help him with the thing. That is my goal. Well, it doesn't happen one day.
No.
It's a constant battle.
Absolutely. No, and I love that. And I'm a few episodes in on this podcast now, and each time I try to talk about the back against the wall moment. And since in this episode our theme is around these races, what has been your most back against the wall moment in a race? And this could be, with Jason doing the worlds, or this could be your own challenges that you've faced. Racing specifically, I think, cancer probably is a pretty higher up there at one in life. But in racing specifically, is there a back against the wall moment that you can recall that either you or Jason were able to acknowledge in that moment and step out of that will to quit and go forward?
I'm actually going to bring Amber in.
All right. Yeah. Even better.
When I watched, like I said, as a pit crew person and watching the different forms of races and in an endurance length race, similar to what they went through, the 5-day stuff, being able to understand what their mindset is and what they're going through. And I'm going to bring through, I know she will not mind me talking about it, her last 24 hours. And she has 24 hours of, I think, 54 miles. She is the only person left in this 250-mile race. And she has 24 hours to do 54 miles. And she spent, like, there is no Amber left. There's nothing left. And that morning, I unzipped the tent to go in, and she was flat on her face. Flat on her face. And she wasn't going anywhere. If you walked in there, she was screaming at you. And to watch Jason, as he was talking, to watch Jason look at her and say, okay, so do you want shorts or capris? And she's screaming insanities at him. But in between, she's like, capris. So he knew at that moment, okay, she's still going to go forward. And she's screaming obscenities at him. And he goes, do you want overnight oats or something else for breakfast? And her body is shutting down. Her mind is shutting, everything is shutting down. They knew, everybody around her knew there was something we needed to do to light a fire. And at the same time that Amber was coming out of her tent, we made her go sign in, because you have to sign in and out for people to understand. And there was, I think, the 50-mile or the 100-mile race starting. And the person announced, oh, here comes Amber. She's signing in. And she is finishing the last 54 miles of a 250-mile race. And she is not only the only person, she's the only female person. And the place erupted. There had to be 40 people. And they just erupted. And that gave her, like, just this purpose. Like, her back was against the wall. But as we talked through this podcast, Jason said you have to have that dick that doesn't allow you to fail. So it wasn't so much her that said, nope, I'm going to pull up my big girl pants and go. It was her support team that lifted her. And when she felt that lift, she went.
That's huge, and I think that that's a perfect story to tell for that back against the wall moment, because that you're not always capable of pulling yourself away from the wall, right? Sometimes you do need the hand to pull
Right.
you up and pull you away, and you don't always want it.
No.
You don't always want it. No, that's huge. That's awesome. We do need to get Amber on the podcast to talk to her about her stories a little bit. But that's what we need, you know, and that is a natural remedy, right? Like that's to tie it all back. You know, it's not some supplement or some thing that got her going. It's just the natural energy from her closest people around her that got her back up and going. And I'm sitting here thinking, my goodness, like I just pushed myself a couple weeks ago to do, 15 miles and, and a lift. And, it's like, geez, that's not a whole lot when I'm looking at this other person who has basically done 200 miles and needs to do 50 more. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, but you're at two different stages within your life and your training.
For sure.
That's what we forget about.
Yeah.
We compare ourselves to people, but we don't know their backstory.
But I think the point that I mean to make there is that how much more we're capable of than we want to even give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely.
I've never run a 200-mile race.
I'm
sitting here.
To do that.
I'm getting ready for a 50-miler in 24 hours. Like basically what she had to do there. It's like, except she's starting with 200 under her belt.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for me to imagine that is incredibly daunting. And I think about some of the points that I've been in at the end of a 10 or a 15-mile run, and like, goodness gracious, are you kidding me? Like throwing another 50 at me at that point? How would I possibly do that? But there it is. That it's not that we can't do that. We can do that. Amber has done that, and Amber's not some, world-class special athlete. Amber's probably a great athlete. Nothing against you there, Amber.
No, she would totally agree with what you just said.
But that's the point, is that you don't need to be, I think a lot of people know this one, right? David Goggins, right?
Yeah.
David Goggins is, seen as this just like ridiculously tough guy and doing all these crazy things. And his whole point is, I'm not special. And he's just gotten to this point where the rest of us are like, shut up, man. Like you're crazy. You're probably one of the toughest dudes on the planet. Like, I don't want to hear that you're not special, but
there's also
real.
People that are like, well, I'm just going to David Goggins it. There's something to say about that also, because, I've learned through this whole process, and anything lately probably in the last 4 years of setting any form of goal, it's not, I want to complete 50 miles in 30 hours. I want to be the healthiest version of myself. And one of the ways I'm going to get there and push my body is to do 50 miles in 30 hours. I want to, if it's somebody who has a weight loss goal, it's not a weight loss goal. It's learning to be the healthiest version of yourself.
Right.
It is, I want to pay off my credit cards. No, that's a step in becoming a money mastery of it. I think we look at goals all wrong as this end result, and a goal should never have an end result. There always should be something. There is a gentleman that does this affinitist, does not do the crazy miles. What he does is what they call the DECA.
Okay.
So it is a marathon a day for 10 days.
Oh, yes.
The gentleman is in his 70s, young, in his 70s. And he tells Amber all the time, you have to have goals. Every day you have to have a goal. There should be a goal. You should always have goals. So he's in his 70s and is like, no, we all have to have goals. That's why you live.
You have purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of examples of it. People
Right.
that live their lives for one thing or another, and then when that is removed because they've retired,
Yeah.
usually they pass away pretty quickly.
Yeah.
They
Don't
lose
say that
that
to
will
your
to
dad.
live. No, he's just now finding his will to live. Actually, I'm not worried about him. he's
Don't say that to your dad.
he's retiring and finding things to do instead of retiring and getting bored. No, I'm not worried about him at all. He'll be just fine. If we could get him to run a race, I think that would be pretty
Well,
damn
that will
cool.
never happen.
That won't happen.
That will never, ever happen.
Maybe we could get him to do like a fishing marathon or something.
Something like that. But yeah.
Get him out on a canoe for 24 hours trying to catch bluegill. That'll keep him going. Well, Michele, this was a special episode. I want to thank you for helping me to pull this together with you and Jason, and just thank you for the insight and the inspiration to do this. I mean, we talked on fear a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one thing that has kept me from doing this, it's fear, for sure.
Yeah.
We've got, when I entertain the idea of running 50 miles in 24 hours with obstacles, and Jason touched on a few of them. For those that don't know what an Arctic enema is, it is just as unpleasant as it sounds. It is a giant ice bath that you must jump into or slide into.
And don't you have to go under something and come back up?
It's full submersion. There's no way to tiptoe your way through that. So at 3 a.m. in November, throw a dart at a map. It doesn't really matter where you are in the United States. It's going to be unpleasant.
It doesn't. And I know he's not on, but I know he would share it also. He just tried to complete something, and I asked him, curiosity, are you afraid? And he looked at me and he said, absolutely not. This is probably the worst fear I've had in the longest time, because it was not a organized race. It wasn't. He was alone on the mountain. He was trying different things. So even the most accomplished athlete, that fear is there. But on that note, I know you have to go. Maybe help them.
Yeah, they start getting impatient. But no, and so I did want to say that, trying to prepare for a race like this is terrifying. It really is, and there are levels to it, so you run a 50-mile race, then, maybe next time you run a 100-mile race, and then all of a sudden, Jason's out there running 500 plus miles, and there's levels to it, and you climb to them. But without the two of you and you doing what you've done, I don't think I would have the courage that that it takes to sign up for this and believe that I can do it. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. And you're taking on the Devil's Den, which is a similar situation. You had 50 miles in 30 hours, which might as well be 24 hours. Doesn't really matter at that point. And so it's incredible. And if you can do it, there's just no reason I shouldn't be out there busting my tail to do it too. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited that we're kind of preparing at similar times. Your race is a couple weeks before mine.
Yep.
But hopefully we can get back together, December, January timing and talk about these things, what happened. And we're going to have great success stories. I think so.
I want to just preface that by, no matter what happens, we're going to have success stories.
For sure. That's a good way to look at it.
Because there is something we're going to have to overcome throughout these races.
Absolutely. So
yes.
And so for the listeners that have made it this far, thank you all so much. Stay tuned. Jump out there and run with us if you want. But, stay tuned to see how these races go and the stories that we bring back, because that is a guarantee with these races and these journeys that we embark on. something's going to happen, something unexpected. There's going to be a story to tell, and we're going to tell it right here. So come on back and see what that sounds like, and hopefully it inspires some of you to get out there and run, or just take on any kind of challenge that might be instilling fear in you. Overcome that fear, face it down.
And any questions, please reach out. Even for myself, even if you're an older woman and not sure anything, please reach out.
Yes.
We're older women now are taking the world by storm.
You're damn right you are. Are you kidding me? Again, kicking cancer's butt on a Friday and getting back to training on Monday, all right? We don't have time for this crap.
No.
We got races to win.
We got races to go. Businesses to build.
and Michelle's contact info will be below, so will Jason's. So if you want to reach out to either of them for anything, please do. Certainly reach out to me. If you're interested in being on the podcast, or just again questions about this lifestyle that we live, where we embrace natural remedies, we face down the things that give us fear in life, and we overcome them. And that's a pretty fun way to live, I think. It's a lot better than living in fear. I'll say that much.
Yes, it is, and our comfort zone, because our potential's on the other side of that.
That's right. Comfort zones are boring. They're super boring. So get out of that thing and go find some adventure. But most of all, y'all, embrace natural remedies, and I hope you will all feel better today. So thank you all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Better by Nature podcast, please click that like button and subscribe to the channel. Feel better today, y'all.